Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. There is a question we have. There are people who don't believe in God, spirituality, religion. They are Gnostic. They still follow not to have any desires and good in their conduct and nature. What about such people? Can they attain self-realization? Now here, first thing what you need to understand is such a scenario itself is theoretical, hypothetical. In reality, a person of such character you can never find in the world. That I want to get rid of desires. Now, when the fellow says, I want to not to have any desires, immediately we have to ask the question, why he doesn't want to have a desire? You see, why he doesn't want to have a desire? What is the problem that he is experiencing with reference to having desires? So there has to be some understanding in him, no, to say that I don't want to have desires. He should understand that desire is causing something, right? Now, what is that desire is causing? Desire causes what? What is the real problem of a desire? Suppose if we say desire is causing so much of mental agitation, then he will not think in terms of getting rid of desires. He will think in terms of getting rid of agitation. Suppose you tell him every day, take a stone and lick it. I'm just giving a very absurd example. Okay? Take a stone, one stone I will give, and keep licking it 10 times. That you have to lick only from bottom to top. What will happen? Your stress will go away if you tell him. He will not be interested in working with reference to getting over his desires and all that. He will straight away buy that stone and start licking it, full stop. Because his problem is not desires. His problem is agitation. I don't want to get attached. Attachment is causing so much of problems. Therefore, I want to get rid of attachment. And he says, he is not actually working with reference to getting rid of it. Remember. You see, that way it will never work. So, what is it that is the real problem with reference to desires? What is wrong with desires? See, that itself 99% don't understand. 99% think desire is, see, too much of desire alone is the problem actually. The desire per se is not the problem. Either one set of people go through like that, another group of people say, sir, desire, too much of desire is the problem. You see, unrealistic desire is the problem. You must have a realistic goal, is it not? You should not have a unrealistic goal. Have a, be practical. See, you can't be desiring all these things, you see. So, too much of desire is what he considers as a problem. He doesn't consider desire itself is the problem. It's only the quantum or it's only the intensity. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, no, that Vega is that momentum, that intensity, that speed is the problem. So what you have to do, reduce the speed, but retain it. Essentially, I have to retain that. Then what I will do, this is another group of people. Now, unless you have conceived God, truth, religion, spirituality, reality, consciousness, fourth state, etc., whatever words you want, Atman, Brahman, self, whatever word you use, doesn't matter. You have to conceive something beyond your current position and understand that that is what your real nature is. Also, you have to understand that it is that desire that is obstructing me to reach there. Therefore, I want to get rid of the desires. Only then you will actually work with reference to get rid of desires. Or else what will happen with reference to these people is, at best, as he says, they will have good conduct. At best, what will be the case, sir? At best, you will be performing good desire-ridden actions where your actions, your conduct, your behaviors were all polluted by good desires. That's about it. What you have to understand is that is also pollution. See, whether you add copper into gold or you add gold into copper, you can't say, oh, gold is something superior, therefore this is, no. Pure copper means it should not have the traces of gold in it. Pure gold means it should not have traces of copper in it. You mix that means out. Same way. Either mixing is wrong. Similarly, whether it is good desires or bad desires doesn't make a difference. Both desires he will not want to give up. He will want to give up only bad desires. Then immediately comes the question, what is bad? On what basis you are going to be deciding this is bad, this is wrong? Anything that is non-productive, socially unacceptable. That's it. As long as it is socially acceptable, we will not mind that is wrong. What's wrong in that? Nothing wrong, no. Isn't it? And that will keep varying from time to time. Isn't it? There was a time once in India, people were getting married very young. Today that is considered as what? Wrong. It was right then, it is wrong today. There was a time once in India, we never believed in a thing called divorce. About 500 years back, divorce is, there's no option. Wrong. Today, that is what? There's nothing wrong about it. You may feel, dejected, depressed, post-divorce syndrome, this, that, and all you may go through, but nothing ethically wrong in that. You see that? But it was ethically wrong some time back. What was socially acceptable one at period of time to a group of people is different from what is acceptable to another group of people living in another period of time, another place. So what is acceptable, what is agreeable is variable. That's about it. So anything which is agreeable amongst all of us, we will agree to it. What's wrong in that? Correct. Go ahead. So he's not going to be working with reference to the very desire itself. He will say certain desires. That's why he looks very good. You see, a good person. To be a good person, you don't have to be believing in God. It's not necessary. Uh, to be a good person, do you have to be, God? Do you have to conceive God? No. That's why he has covered all the three. God he has added, spirituality he has added, religion also he has added in the question. He said all three he doesn't believe in. So no room for error. Suppose if he says he doesn't believe in God, immediately we will start working on what? Playing with words. See, you don't have to be believing in God. Which God? I believe in one God, you believe in another God. That's about it. Isn't it? About 3,000 years back, human beings were living, no? Hmm? That 3,000 year back people believed in a particular God, correct? Where are those gods now? Today, all of us say there is a God. Post 3,000 years down the line, you go, we are in 2021, right? 5021, let's say, a group of people sitting and discussing, let's say, if humanity were to survive so long, right? If they were to sit and discuss, what would be their conception of God? Same as what we are conceiving today. Their gods will be totally different from our idea of God. Therefore, which God we will analyze? That's why he says, God is taken out. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in spirituality. He doesn't believe in religion. He doesn't believe in anything, sir. But he wants to get rid of desires. That is not possible. But he can be good. That is possible. To be a good person, you don't need God. There's no necessity. There are a lot of atheistic people whom every one of you would know in your own circle. Every one of us can find at least couple in our own social circle saying they don't believe in anything, but definitely that man cannot be called as bad. He has a very good character. Such a fantastic character he has. To have a good character, you don't need religion. But if you have to take a stand saying, I have to get rid of the desires, that would be possible only after you have conceived of something higher. Also, you have to understand it is the desire that is not allowing you to reach there, get into that. Then only you will work with reference to get rid of desires completely, or else you would want to get rid of certain desires, not all desires. En bloc, you will not think in terms of dropping desires. You see, now desires you just replace with ego, no? Then all of you will understand. Even though no understanding we have with reference to what ego means, but still we understand. Ego, in the sense of what for most of us, arrogance. Is such an arrogant person, sir. Very egoistic is. Now, do you have to believe in God to be humble, not to be arrogant? That is not a problem. But to drop that sense of individuality, I am different, you are different. To remove that, to eliminate that, what will motivate that fellow? You see, that's what the problem is. Then comes a staggering truth. This is the first layer. You probe little further, we understand. Suppose, is there a possibility? First thing I said, to be good, there's no necessity for you to have the idea of God and all those things. If you probe little further, little deeper, if you go into, is it possible that you be good without that conception of spiritual religion? Vedanta says impossible. Why? Because you will be unselfish, good with reference to a particular circle. The fact that you had put a circle, beyond that circle, what are you? I am so sacrificial within that circle. If I had put my family as the circle, then I am so sacrificial with reference to my family. But what about other families then? The interest of my family versus the interest of other family comes into picture. Then my personal interest versus my family interest, then I forego my interest and I give priority to the family interest. Correct. That's called a sacrifice. Right? That's where I'm being good to my family. Suppose my interest and family interest, if I give example, you will understand. I want to drink alcohol, therefore I beat my wife. I don't do it, just an example. Right? Don't immediately send a message. Does he do that? I ask my child to go to work, earn money, bring that Saturday, payday, weekly wages. What this fellow does? He is waiting outside that company. I've seen that in Tamram Sanatorium. There's an export zone they had. These kids, from the neighboring slum, they would be working in that, zone where they do the, kaja work they do. It's like, they stitch the buttons and all that, put buttons and everything for the shirts and things. Then it will get exported. 1 week, this, kids, these boys and girls, they work there. And I've seen their parent, their father standing outside. They collect that money and come out. This guy is standing there. They give him, he takes that money, straight he'll go to liquor shop. He'll buy liquor. What do you call him? Good. Terrible fellow, sir. Such a terrible man he is. Why? Why do you say he is bad? He's not good. He is bad. Why he is bad? Because for his things, he is putting his family at stake for my pleasure. Suppose if that person were to do the reverse, he foregoes a meal. I told you people, my friend's father, he would go by walk. Same, 20 minutes walk. From his house, this direction he goes Mailapur bus stand. This side he goes Mandavali. This difference is how much? 15 pies difference. If he walks here, he'll get a seat. He can sit aram se and travel. If he walks this side, he will not get seat. He has to stand. But sometimes he may get. Most of the time they won't get. Because the peak hour. He will get in. Evening also, he goes there. The difference is one stage. One stage difference is, he says, in a month I save about 15 rupees. 15 rupees I save. And with that, he says, I can do something to my son. I can get something to this fellow. They enjoy. We call him as what? Oh, very good man he is. Why? He keeps his interest aside and takes care. That's how we identify. Good and bad. He's a good man. He's a bad man. How do you identify that, sir? When I keep my pleasures aside, for whom I keep these things aside? Beyond that family is the community. Do you keep your community, my pleasures versus the community pleasure? Am I willing to sacrifice my family's comfort for the community welfare? You are good. But what is so interesting is, you are so good for that community. But if the interest of your community versus another community comes, then what happens to you? Same party. One person here says, no matter, even, what is this? Our chief minister's comment about 2 days back. That extra water going into that state, we will not allow. I will not allow that extra rainwater, Extra, no. Give it. No, we will not give. Let all the farmers farming and their life, everything can go at state. I don't care. But with reference to my state, what I am. Now, immediately BJP chief has to call this man and say, what? Hey, we are standing for election there. So what you have to do now? Soften your tone. That's what in the papers I saw today. The BJP had asked this man to soften his tone now. Go slow. After the election, talk whatever you want. Doesn't matter. But right now, don't do. Why? Because they have to stand for election in Tamil Nadu now. Therefore, there is a... Now, with reference to my community, I am so sacrificial. I can afford to be. I will appear good. But remember, so long as you are putting the boundaries, you are excellent within that boundary. Beyond that, you can say, I am so sacrificial. I am willing to forego my personal, my family, my community also, for the sake of my country. You are so good to your country, but what about the neighboring country? Other country, what are you? Your country interest versus other country's interest comes into picture, then what happens? I'm not saying immediately you should, forego, please. I'm not talking about that. See, when you say good, ultimate good, what is ultimate good you can have in your life? What action that you can do which is ultimately good for not only to you, to your family, to your community, to your country, to your species, to all the species, belonging to all periods of time? Is there a possibility of conceiving something beyond all this? that action is only one action. That is the action of evolution, meaning action that I perform to get rid of my desires. And to get rid of my desires, go back to the previous point we studied. You cannot get rid of that desire. You cannot work with reference to getting rid of the desires unless you are conceived. You are inspired by the goal of realization. Unless you are conceived that. Therefore, in Vedanta, we'll say pay more attention to that first. Forget about these things. These are all details. Without that fundamental thing, getting onto the details is of no use to you. So we say at one stage, we say, yes, okay, you can afford to be good. So essentially answering to the question, both are not possible. Without the conception of the truth, God, reality, spiritual, religion, etc., it is not possible for such a scenario that a person will be interested to getting rid of their desires and he can be inherently good. Impossible. Their goodness are all conditional. A possibility. Can they attain self-realization? Not possible. Without conception of that, it is impossible for you to go ahead. Right. Now, continuing with the text proper. I think I was referring to the last class where I did mention this, that you have to conceive the goal of realization and then link it to the practices, or whatever they are going to say. What is bhakti, what is knowledge, what is jnanam, what is karma, etc. Now, all these three or the four spiritual practices. So he says there are four spiritual practices. He says the bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, and hatha yoga. These are the four yogas we have. Now, just to get a basic idea of this path of devotion, path of bhakti means, you have to understand, it just means love towards God. Now, how did you develop love towards your child, towards your grandchild? The moment the child, you see the child, they bring something and show you, this is your child. As soon as you saw the child, how you felt? So much of love comes in straight away. It's not that after a period of time, after this, nothing, you just see that you get it. But how did you should have done something, no? For you to feel that love. This is what Bhakti Sutra says. Narada Bhakti Sutra. There's a text called Narada Bhakti Sutra. Bhakti Sutra is written by Narada. Sage Narada has written one sutra, this one, aphorisms on Bhakti. Says, what is devotion? What is Bhakti? He says, intense love to God is called Bhakti, he says. What is that intense love? To love someone, what do you have to do? What have you done? You would have experienced that love, no, somewhere in your life. Suppose if you say, I've never experienced love, forget it. Right? Now, somewhere down the line, you would have experienced love. What did you do to experience that feeling? This is how we do classes. ask the question and leave. Pause. Think, what did you do to love that person? What is it? Something must have done, no? Something you have done so differently than the others. Something you have done. Out of that, you are claiming that I am loving. All that you have done is what? Constantly thinking about it. More and more and more you think about it, you start loving it. You constantly think for it, love. You constantly think against it, hatred. So love and hatred are same thing. Both means what, sir? Constant thinking. Only difference is what? For it or against it. When I think of someone for, it is love. Against, hatred. That's all. But fundamental rule remains the same. What is it, sir? Consistent thinking. And once you have started developing that love, you start experiencing certain peculiar phenomena. Not like you will start feeling hungry, you will not get sleep and all that, please. That's a lot of madness. Right? We're not talking about that. When you start loving, that because that particular object or that particular being takes high priority, anything other than that becomes a stressor. It starts triggering irritation. Everything else becomes irrelevant. It becomes stressful, irritating, irrelevant. The moment the girl is in love with the boy, or the boy is in love with the girl, what happens to his family? How he sees his family now? How she sees her family now? The moment a lady gets a child, what happens to husband? Husband becomes secondary after that. You know, the child becomes a priority. That's why there's a lot of fight happens. Why? Anything other than that becomes a disturbance to my constant thinking. I want to think in that direction. If something else comes up, what will I do with that? I will get irritated with it. I will not want it. So what is love, sir? Love is nothing but intense wanting. Intensely, I want something. That's called the love. And I cannot be happy with anything other than that. I want that means I want only that. That's a classic example we give is like, in fact, it should be Majnu Laila. Because the Persian poetry more Majnu's love towards Laila than Laila's love towards Majnu. That's why I used to tell, this college days. Boys' love is much more spoken of than girls' loves. Why? True love is only boys will have. See, So you see, no, all these great ones, they say, whose love is portrayed more? Rama's pangs of separation is depicted by Valmiki more than Sita's pangs of separation. Adi Kavi, you need more authority than that. If you read Ramayana, Ravana abducted Sita, right? After that, when Sita appears again on scene, almost if you read that, you would have forgotten that Sita character was abducted by Ravana. Thousands of shlokas passed by. Thousands of shlokas gone. Hardly any reference about, no reference of Sita, no scene of Sita comes. Sita scene appears only after Hanuman goes to Lanka. Thanks. The pain, that's called love. If you can experience, feel something like that, that is called bhakti. This Majnu's love towards Laila. That is bhakti. Jnanam is what is there. I'm not going into the detail. We are going to study much more in detail later on. So I'm just giving you an idea of what is, bhakti yoga. It just says no bhakti yoga. What is bhakti? Bhakti means this. Bhakti in one word. Remember this. Intense love for God. Like that intense love you have towards your own, you can underline. Like the love that you are carrying, underline anything. Whatever you love, whoever you love. Do you love God like that? That is the question. How did you develop that? By constant thinking. So Bhakti Yoga is what? The practice of a particular way of relating to God constantly, as a result of which you will start developing that love towards God and then intensify that love. Bhakti Yoga becomes simple. In essence, okay. And then there are other aspects are there in that. Now we're not going, we'll see that. Similarly, what is this Jnana Yoga? Now, Jnana Yoga is not immediately we understand. That is, I know this, I know that, I know a lot of things. That's not Jnana Yoga. Then what is Jnana Yoga? Jnana Yoga means a constant inquiry into the truth, a constant thinking, constant inquiry, vichara. Nitya, Anitya, Viveka, Vichara. Say Shankara, what is Jnana Yoga? Definition for the path of Jnanam. What is Jnana Yoga, sir? Nitya, Anitya, Viveka, Vichara. That knowledge that you gain out of this discriminative inquiry into what is real and what is unreal. Meaning, whatever I know, whatever I experience, whatever I see, you inquire into the reality of it. Is it real? Could this be real? That's all. That inquiry, as a result of that thinking, that questioning, that investigation, you come to certain understanding. See, that understanding is called jnana. Then what is this karma yoga? So Bhakti Yoga, one word, intense love. Jnana Yoga, what is that? Inquiry into the nature, inquiry into the reality of it. That is Jnana Yoga. Then what is Karma Yoga, sir? Karma Yoga means actions performed with the attitude of service and sacrifice. Action is executed with a particular outlook of in what way I can be of some service. One, and your willingness to sacrifice them. So, what is Karma Yoga, sir? Karma Yoga means karma, action, rituals. You perform again and again a particular action over and over again. Action is done. What is that action, sir? The ritual. Ritual is what? Yajna. Yajna means what? Fire worship. You don't know. That's called ritual. Fire worship means what? Two things happens there. One, you offer, you put something into fire, whatever you put it, right? Something you pour. There is an oblation, and that oblation is oblated along with the mantra. You see, that's called yajna. Yajna means these two things. One, there has to be oblation. Two, it should be done along with the mantra. Without a mantra, if you put, then it is called a bogey. You just burn everything. That's all. Right? That's not the things, please. That's not fire worship. Fire worship means what, sir? So there has to be that oblation plus mantra. That is called Karma Yoga. What is the mantra? This is what the Kanji Acharya would say. Yajnam means there's only one thing you do in yajna, nothing else. Yajna means immediately understand that mantra. Mantra means what, sir? Not all that, various mantras, not all those things, please. Mantra is only one mantra. What is that one mantra that comes again and again and again and again and again is idam na mama. This is not mine. That's the attitude. What is the attitude? Action is service oriented. Attitude is what? Not mine. That's a sacrifice. Services that you should render with the sacrificial attitude. So there is an action plus attitude. Particular type of action performed with that particular attitude. So one set of actions coupled with this. That's what yajna is. Yajna is what? You have to offer something. You can't say, simply sit there and say, Idanna mama, Idanna mama, Idanna mama. That is not yajna, please. Nor can you say that I keep pouring everything into fire. Burn everything, sir. That is also not yajna. Then when it becomes a yajna, sir? When you are offering that ahuti along with the mantra, then it is this Karma Yoga, path of action. Then comes the fourth one, says Hatha Yoga. Hatha means compulsion, force. The path of compulsion. You compel a person to do. That is, you force a person to execute. Why? Because essentially he is indolent. He doesn't perform any action. Since he is not moving, you force externally, you give that force to make him move, induce pain into him to make him move. That is called the path of compulsion, hatha yoga. As they'll be, walking on the nail, slipper, nail bed, stand under fire, put fire all over and keep sitting there, doing this, doing that, all sorts of physically forcing the person to do something. You see, all these practices, they're called hatha yoga. So there are 4 types of yogas, but all these yogas were practiced to eradicate the vasanas, desires. The one who belongs to the emotional cadre, page number 207, second paragraph. The one who belongs to the emotional cadre has the mind more pronounced than the intellect. Now, what he is doing is he is elaborating, explaining the 4 categories, 4 paths connecting to 4 category of people: emotional, intellectual, active, indolent. Who are they? So, first thing he is doing is that before explaining what is Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga, first thing he goes on to explain is the personality type. What are the personality type? There are 4 personality types. The first one is the emotional type. He takes up. Says the one who belongs to the emotional cadre has the mind more pronounced than the intellect. His heart predominates over his head. He is more impulsive, emotional, devotional, less rational, intellectual, contemplative. He gives in to his feeling and emotion. The mind rules his personality rather than the intellect. Such a person is designed for the path of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. He would need a form, an altar, a personal God to pour out his love. His mind revels in the remembrance of the Lord of his heart. The devotion to his Lord displaces all other feeling and thought. Consequently, his mind is focused upon the higher. With sustained devotion, the devotee becomes free of his desires. What is this emotional type of a personality? He says. The emotional type means the one who is giving in to his emotions, who is more of devotional in nature, who has the capacity to surrender. That's called an emotional person. He is capable of surrendering. Right. The next one, I'll just come back to it. We'll just read out the rest and then we'll see more. The second type is the intellectual, whose intellect is more developed than the mind. His head predominates over his heart. He is more analytical, rational, less impulsive, emotional. His intellect controls the passions of his mind. He remains objective, does not succumb to his feeling and emotion, is logical in his approach to life, an inquirer, perceives the distinction between the terrestrial and the transcendental, but he will not be satisfied in merely postulating, posing a personal God. Does not take things for granted. He needs logic and reason to accept anything. A person of such caliber is suited for the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. Following this path, he becomes rooted in the contemplation of the reality. Consequently, his mundane thoughts and desires drop off. So he's explaining the type of personality, how he practices, and how that practices takes him to realization. With reference to bhakta, with reference to the emotional person, he says, what is an emotional person? He is devotional in nature. He is capable of surrendering in nature. Therefore, he takes up that altar, personal God, and pours out all his emotions there. As a result of which, he doesn't entertain any worldly emotions and desires. Everything becomes his love of the heart. Therefore, what happens to him? That devotion, that surrender displaces everything else. All that worldly desires go off for him. Same way to the intellectual person, what is it? Intellectual means he is rational. Rational in all the transactions of his life. He is a very, very logical person. He will go through everything logically. In his life, everything is measured, well thought of, well planned, well conceived, lifestyle he goes through. Such a person will not take anything for granted. He will never assume anything for granted. And you can't tell him there is God and all those things to this fellow. To him, what is needed, sir? He needs to inquire. Through that constant inquiry, since he is constantly engaged on that inquiry of the higher truth, that inquiry displaces all the thoughts pertaining to the world. Since he is focused there, automatically this drops off to this fellow. That is the intellectual person. Second category. Then the third category. The third type, classified as active, possesses a mind and intellect more or less equally developed. He could be sometimes emotional and at other times rational. He has a mixed temperament. The path of action, Karma Yoga, caters to such a person where both the mind and intellect are engaged. The mind surrenders to the higher ideal he works for, while his intellect channelizes action towards the ideal. Thus, with the mind and intellect set on the higher goal, he sheds his worldly thoughts and desires. This is the third category. The third one is active. Who is an active personality, sir? Active personality means he is a combination. Neither emotional nor intellectual. Meaning, sometimes he will be emotional, sometimes he will be intellectual. But what is the meaning of that sometimes? Nobody knows. What time is sometimes, sir? Like people say, sometime you come home, no? I say, sometime. What is the meaning of sometime? I say, whenever you are free, why don't you call me? I say, I'll never be free in my life. Now, where will you have free? One day you should come. So, I remember one of the student was telling me, the class, one day you should come home for, lunch. I said, okay. One day. I said, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Is there a thing called one day? One day you must come. The same way he says, sometimes he's, sometimes he sees what? This fellow is, you can't rely on this guy. Very unreliable character he is. You see, 1 second he will become so emotional, next second he will become so rational. You see, 99% of humanity will fall into this category. Okay, 95%. If not 99, 95% will fall into this category. Emotional is neither emotional nor intellectual. He is a mixed type. Sometimes emotional, sometimes rational. This means unpredictable, unreliable. Is this fellow? Then what he has to do? He has to get on to action, do things. When he starts doing things, what happens there, sir? There, the mind surrenders, intellect channelizes. So both are engaged in him. This is the third type. The last category is the indolent. The indolent lacks both head and heart. His intellect is poorly developed. He can hardly think, rationalize. No way conceive the existence of the transcendental reality. Nor does his mind possess feeling, emotion. Far from having devotion to bow down to any altar, deity, or personal god. Hence, he cannot take in spirituality either through the mind or the intellect or a combination of both. That leaves him unfit to take up any of the above three courses. The only recourse left for him is to administer discipline forcibly through his physical body, through the path of compulsion, Hatha Yoga. Hatha means force, oppression. Hatha Yoga is therefore a discipline administered through force. It covers a schedule of physical exercises known as asana and pranayama and a series of other practices involving self torture, such as standing on one leg or holding up arms for long periods, inhaling smoke, and other such torturous practices. These are undertaken as spiritual practices. They help to draw the practitioner out of his indolence, help the mind to start feeling, the intellect start thinking. He gradually grows to qualify for the other three spiritual courses. This is the fourth category of it. The fourth one is what, sir? First category, mind more developed. Second category, intellect is more developed. Third category, both are equally developed. Kamsi kamsa. Right. This also, that also category. The fourth one is both are not developed. What do you learn from this? Catch. What do you learn from this is essentially spirituality means discussion with reference to your mind and intellect. Entire spiritual path is based on the understanding of your personality, which is defined by your mind and intellect. Your personality is not defined by your body. Personality is defined by what is beyond that body. What is beyond that body is mind and intellect. So if your mind is evolved, developed more, then you are being called as emotional, and that emotional person will take up this path of devotion because that suits him better. Intellectual, he is inquiring in nature. Naturally, he takes to inquiry. Since he is taking into inquiry, he is guided to go into the subtle inquiry of what is real and what is unreal, as a result of which he grows. He drops his desires, meaning, he grows in the sense he is not engaged. He doesn't allow his lower thinking at all. It is always higher thinking in him. Second. Third category is both are there. Sometimes he is emotional, sometimes he is intellectual. Then what to do with that person, sir? Then naturally he will be inclined towards action. Since he takes up action, natural, then he has to use those actions, perform action in a particular manner, and then evolve. For him. Third type. The fourth type is what he's explaining here as indolent. Indolence means what, sir? Inactive. He doesn't get on to action. Meaning, neither he has the capacity to feel any emotion, any emotion in the sense, feel any subtler emotions. Remember that. Emotions, go back to the chapter, strength of emotion. There, he discusses what is an emotion. Emotions can be experienced in two ways. One is higher emotions and the lower emotions. You are an emotional person depending on what higher emotion that you are able to feel. The criteria is not lower emotions. How much you can feel jealous doesn't define you are an emotional person, please. Are you an emotional person? We would immediately ask, are you capable, how much you are capable of experiencing fine emotion, refined emotions. To that extent, you are emotional. An emotional person means that. I may be wondering, no, sir, too much of confusion. Don't confuse us. Emotional, active. In our normal conversation, we refer only karma bhakti jnana. Hardly we refer with reference to this Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is not considered at all in our general discussion. Only here he is referring. Even in the chapter, if you see, there is no explanation for Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is over here. In this portion, he has completed what is Hatha Yoga. Who has to practice? What is Hatha Yoga practices? What Hatha Yoga practices does. All three is covered here. What is that, sir? Who practices? Indolent fellow practices Hatha Yoga. What is this? It's a path of compulsion. You force him to do something which is not natural. Like natural thing is to stand on two legs. Now you ask a fellow to stand on one leg for 5 hours. 3 hours you got to stand on one leg. Why should I stand on one leg for 3 hours? One day he will ask that question. Or he will get annoyed. He will start feeling, Appa. He'll get, then mind and intellect started developing in him. Now I've been mentioning this to you people. This yoga, meditation and all these things, even though it was existing for a long period of time in India, it was known, but it was not popular. Why it was not popular? Because they took these things. Now, when he says this asana, pranayama, and all those things, he's not referring to the way that we are practicing yoga day. We are doing it as a physical exercise. You see, there's nothing spiritual about it. Now, don't think that the way you do yoga class, you go and start thinking that to be spiritual. That's, if you do it as a spiritual discipline, then what is it? Are you doing it as a spiritual discipline is the first question. All the yoga studios today we have, nothing is spiritual there, remember. There's nothing spiritual about it. Because you have to connect it like this. You have to make a connection. To whom that is given, first establish. Then what it can do. to that person. To whom that is given? To the one who is inactive. Then what it will do? It will wake up his personality. His personality is at sleep now. When a person is sleeping, what discipline you will give him? Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga. First thing you have to do is what? Wake him up, no? A person is sleeping, will you teach English or you teach mathematics or you teach accountancy? Which one you will teach him? You can't say, sir, wake him up, no. Now, what you do to wake him up has got nothing to do with what you are going to teach him. Now, the first three disciplines are what you have to teach him. The fourth one is there is a small section of humanity which will be 0.0001% will be there in humanity. Vast majority will fall into the category of active. Minuscule personalities will be falling into the category of intellect. Now, the compassion of these masters is such that they say you can't leave that person out. So what you have to do, wake him up first. To wake that person up, they developed a particular discipline. This accounts for why, even though these things were existing in India from time immemorial, but never made popular. Isn't it? It was not made popular. Why it was not made popular? Because it has no relevance. It is relevant itself only to that person. How many amongst human beings, how many you will find like that, sir? Very difficult to find such people. That is why it was never brought into a specific course. That's the exception. So that's all. For all purpose, it does it. And what is the role of this Hatha Yoga is to wake up that inner personality. The mind will wake up, or intellect will wake up, or slowly the both will wake up. Once that wakes up, give him the course. Then depending upon what comes up first, you give it up. You administer that. So there are 4 yogas to these 4 personalities: emotional, intellectual, active, intellect. More we'll see in the next class.